Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm talking about the episode The Prize. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you'd like to know when I'm posting another video. The Prize is an episode from season 2 in which many members of the family and a special guest who comes by the mountain are all in search of their own sort of prize. Early in the episode, I am in the kitchen washing my hair or doing something special with it, but because at one point I asked Mama if she would pour a vinegar rinse over my hair. And I think it's just designed to kind of help get all the extra oils out of my hair because Grandma makes some comment about that. And Mama replies that at my age, I've got more oil in my hair than I know what to do with. I was fortunate to not go through a really oily hair phase personally, but that was a lot of hair to get wet and to have to then deal with wet in a number of scenes, and they weren't all shot at the same time. So for several scenes that are supposed to be consecutive, when you see me, my hair is still wet or some degree of wet, inside, outside. And depending on when those were shot, they would have had to wet my hair down again so that it matched. Evidently, Yancy has given Ben a pig that he has named Rover that has now grown, and he has been asked if he will let his pig be used for a greased pig contest at the upcoming fair, for which he will be paid $1. And he's hoping to maybe use that dollar to get a female pig and start a little, pig farm, raising pigs and selling them. So he's looking forward to that. I thought it was interesting that he named the pig Rover, and we never really saw the pig again. But in later seasons, Jim Bob had a peacock that he named Rover. So Rover became a popular Walton pet name. It's Sunday after church, and the Baldwin sisters stop by with a guest. This is Oscar Cockrell, who was a boyhood friend of John's and also a sometime suitor early on of Olivia. I guess they went on a couple of dates. And she says later that she only went out with him to make John jealous, so she was never seriously interested in him, but he seems to have been seriously interested in her. Now, the character of Oscar was played by Peter Donat. Peter was Michael Learned's first husband, and they actually were divorced in 1972, shortly before Michael started doing the Waltons. So interesting that he came back and did an episode of the series. Clearly, they were still close enough that there was no animosity with them working together, and they had lovely on-screen chemistry. And I never sensed any sort of tension around the set between the two of them. I think being the parents of 3 boys together, they had to always have a working relationship. So that was lovely to see. Peter was also the nephew of Oscar-winning actor Robert Donat. Oscar is back on the mountain because he is running for the legislature. So he is back to drum up support and sort of campaign in the area. He has mixed feelings about pursuing this political career because he feels that he is not particularly easily able to get people to warm up to him, that he has trouble connecting with people, and he sees that members of the Walton family, he feels that John is very good at that. John Boy is good at that. Olivia is good at that, and he, I think, wishes that he were more like that. Olivia is planning to enter a cake from the recipe of Cousin Polly into the fair contest and is hoping to win first place. Grandma is going to be entering a quilt that she has spent 3 years making, and she is also hoping to win first place. Lighting always fascinates me, particularly when there are circumstances where lights change, things like that. In this case, we are all supposedly, the 3 girls are going to bed. I go and I turn the lights out, and you see the room definitely gets very dim. Then I get in bed and the 3 girls have a conversation. Well, when they go into this 2-shot of Aaron and Elizabeth, you can see them very clearly, so it seems like an awful lot of light, and yet no one turned the light back on. It cuts back to Mary Ellen, and there was a lot of light on me. So I can see how it would be challenging if you dim the lights the way they really would be. You wouldn't be able to see the actors at all. And yet, if you throw on enough light for them to really be visible, then they can look like, where did this light come from? So definitely an art form to being able to light all of this. And I think it was more difficult in film circumstances because digital just allows for different manipulation of the light than film actually did. When Olivia is getting ready to frost the cake and she has been in need of almonds, she finds out that they weren't able to get almonds from the store, that they were all out. So she's not quite sure what she's going to do. And Grandma confesses that it wasn't almonds that Cousin Polly put in that, it was actually whiskey. Mama is shocked. And Grandma was like, well, and surprisingly that Grandma's kind of like, well, it's not illegal anymore since Prohibition's over. And she knows that Grandpa has a secret storage of it, a little bottle that he keeps that he doesn't know she knows about. She said she feels that it's good for men to have secrets. So she doesn't want him to know, but she is willing to go pinch a little bit, just a smidgen, as she says, for the cake, so that it'll have that extra taste. And Olivia, really wanting to win, goes along. Oscar comes by driving a beautiful convertible. I'll try and see if I can find out what that is. And he talks to Olivia as we are picking raspberry. Mary Ellen eavesdrops, having her, I think, suspicions about what Oscar's intentions are. Oscar talks to Olivia a little bit about his wife, who is, I guess, a bit younger than all of them were in school. And his wife is off in Europe and seems to be perfectly happy to sort of live her own life. And I think Oscar doesn't have a particularly happy, close relationship and marriage, as John and Olivia clearly do. That evening, Grandpa goes for a little nip of the recipe before going to bed and notices that some is missing. He's a little bit like, who might have taken that? He looks over at Esther, and as he gets in bed, he leans over to try and smell her breath to see if she smells of the recipe, and he startles her awake and accuses her of having taken his whiskey, and she's like, don't be ridiculous. He says, well, someone in the house smells like the recipe. Oscar ends up giving John Boy a ride to the fair, and as the two of them are driving along, the shot transitions from a live scene on the back lot to a process shot. So in this case, this would be a screen behind the car with footage from a road playing behind them. However, I noticed that it didn't seem to be exactly the same terrain as they were driving on in the real shot, mainly because I know that back lot and I know that that's not what it looked like. And all of a sudden we have different trees and it's wider and all that. But if someone didn't know what the back lot looked like, they would totally buy this. We arrive at the fairgrounds where all kinds of wonderful little booths and a few rides have been set up somewhere on the back lot of the studio. I think we were someplace in the jungle, maybe on the edge of Western Street where they set this up. Perhaps in the area near where the church we use sometimes was. So it was always a lot of fun when they had this sort of thing set up because shortly after that, all the kids get to go ride on this, what Elizabeth calls the merry-go-round, which is really just kind of a roundabout sitting in these buckled in kind of seats. And so there we were. We got to go ride this for some time. And again, because of the way shooting is done, there are several instances where you can see that we are on this ride, but it would have been different shots, different angles. The camera would have moved. And so when they finished, they would have gotten us off the ride. They would have reset, but then they would have, when they started again, if they could see that ride in the background, they would have put us all back on that ride in the same seats we were in. And we would have ridden again to be in the background of that shot. So that can be fun sometimes if it doesn't go on and on and on and you aren't getting a little seasick from it. In this case, I think it was a lot of fun. The Baldwin sisters also have something to enter in the fair in competition, and that is their jelly. They really confuse the woman who is running the jelly stand because they can't quite tell her what it is. It doesn't look like raspberry, it doesn't quite look like strawberry, and they're like, oh, no, it's a very special recipe from our papa, the judge. And she's very confused. And finally, they all agree that it'll go in the family recipe section, which is just perfect. John Boy finds Grandpa sitting with a couple of other men, just, telling tall tales about being with Teddy Roosevelt at San Juan Hill with the Rough Riders when they charged up the hill and John Boy knows this isn't entirely true. Grandpa does like to tell tall tales, and sometimes they get more and more exaggerated the more he tells them. A cute sequence as the men compete to try and ring the bell. Oscar comes nowhere close. John Boy sends it right up to the top, as does John Walton. It's time to judge the jelly competition, and as Dr. Vance, one of the judges, tastes the Baldwin's jelly, you see his reaction, and it doesn't take him more than one taste to realize what this jelly is flavored with, and all the judges are very enamored of this jelly, and it does indeed win first place. John and John Boy win at the ball toss and win the kids a couple of stuffed prizes. Grandma, unfortunately, does not win in her quilting competition, and she's very upset because she feels that the person who actually did win is using a quilt that she had won with once before, and so she's not playing fair. Olivia does, in fact, win her cake, wins first place in the cake competition. Grandpa swipes a little taste of that frosting just to confirm what he suspected, that indeed the recipe was the secret ingredient that put Olivia's cake over the top. As it's time for Oscar to give his speech, he's getting some ribbing from the audience who are unimpressed by his prepared written speech. And finally, he tosses it aside and he speaks from the heart and makes a far stronger impression on the crowd. He's just himself and says what he really feels, proving once again the best thing we can do is be ourselves and be honest. It kind of wraps up with the greased pig competition, where a number of the men in town try to catch the greased pig. The pig at one point gets out of the little pen and runs through the fair, and everybody's trying to catch it. Ultimately, George Porter catches it, and as he does, he recognizes his mark on the pig's ear, asks Ben where it came from, and John offers to buy it off of him because he knows Ben wants to go into raising pigs, into that business, and so he arranges to buy the pig. He doesn't have the money on him. Oscar pulls out his billfold and then looks at Olivia, who basically, sends him a look that says, no, he shouldn't do that. And she offers up the $5 she won for winning the cake competition, and they use that to buy the pig. As they walk off, John comments that he felt bad that Olivia didn't get to buy something for herself with that money. And she replies that she has everything she could want. That's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the episode The Prize. I'll be back with more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.